G'day everybody, my name's Alistair Harkness and I am one of the editors of the Bristol University Press Research in Rural Crime series, and I'm here with my co-editor, Dr. Jessica Peterson. G'day, Jess.
Hello, I am Jessica Peterson, as he said, and I am currently located in the United States in Oregon.
And I'm at the University of New England in Armidale, New South Wales, a regionally based university in Australia. And together, we're very pleased to present to you a little bit of information about the book series. Hopefully, entice you to pitch an idea about rural crime, rural criminology. I guess the first thing that you're probably interested in knowing is what are we looking for? And just logistically, this series was established in 2020. It's already published a couple of titles and there's more along the way. And it's really aimed at the mid-length book. So we're thinking around 60,000 to 80,000 words. So not a big humongous volume, not just a short, brief one either, but in that mid-length category.
These types of there are some different types of contributions that we're interested in. These can be either edited, right? So edited volumes, sole written volumes, or co-authored books as well. And these can be situated, based on a specific or focused on a specific country. They can be situated or focused on a specific issue, as long as it's rural focused. And so there are some different types of approaches that we accept in regards to those types of topics.
Yeah, you can really put your thinking cap on and imagine how you'd like to present information to a audience interested in matters around rurality and particularly crime as well. So you might have collected a whole heap of empirical data, some original data, and present that. Or you might want to adopt a very theoretical approach, really teasing out some key ideas, advancing the knowledge. That's what this is really all about in scholarship. Or alternatively, you might have a mixed methods approach. And I guess, as Jess said, there's a number of different ways that you can slice and dice a book, whether it's an edited collection with an array of different contributors all coming together with a common theme, or it might be something that you've worked on by yourself or with just one or two other people. I guess the next key consideration in thinking about a proposal and a book in the series is, well, what do we actually mean by rural crime? So we need to sort of contextualize that a little bit, I guess, don't we?
Yeah, and that can really be um, a topic that is kind of a general crime and justice issue that's just, for example, gender-based violence, right? That's kind of a general crime issue, and we might be looking for a volume that's focused on that topic in the rural context. We also might look for, we'd be interested in volumes that are aimed at kind of the quintessential rural crime problems, like farm crime, right? Things that tend to only or predominantly occur in rural contexts. So either contextualizing, quote, common issues in rural settings, or focusing specifically on issues that are unique to rural settings.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to underscore. I mean, as we know, there's a huge number of crimes which it doesn't matter the geographic location, they'll happen anyway. So issues around gender-based violence, drug and alcohol use and misuse, and so on. But then there's a whole another scope of crimes which will predominate in rural areas. So some of the crimes which happen in boomtown economies, for instance, there's a few people who've done quite a lot of work on the oil and gas industries, and where you see this convergence of a whole heap of people into a small isolated area for mining and extraction employment opportunities, and that then brings with it a number of social dislocations, There's a lack of familiarity and sort of attachment to the local area, and crimes can predominate. So that is almost the importation of certain behaviours into that in that local community. But then, of course, you're unlikely in the main street of Fifth Avenue in New York or in Oxford Street, London, are you going to have terribly much cattle being stolen or quad bikes and tractors being stolen. So there's some of those quintessential crimes that will only happen in rural areas. But I
I
think
think another important point too is just the difference in the way that the different components of the criminal justice system operate. There might be a tendency to think that, oh, you're just taking what happens in an urban setting and replicating it in rural spaces, but policing, the court system, corrections, the way those operate in rural areas is quite different. So again, kind of contextualizing, well, how does the rural context and the rural environment contribute to change, alter the way that those components are able to operate and achieve justice, right, in those areas.
and teasing apart those key differences. So, for instance, and rural means different things in different places. So,
Mm-hmm.
Australia and the United States, two countries that we're familiar with, massive land, massive amounts of land, and huge distance between properties. Compare that with some of the small Pacific islands or small countries in Europe, developing countries elsewhere, where what is meant by rural is completely different. One thing we do know is that 45% of the population live in rural areas, uh, and that's a lot of people out of the 8 billion population of the world. And I think that's a reason that we should care, and we should shine a light, which has often been not shone on crimes that happen in rural areas. But there's so many different dimensions that we can think about. Books in this series, though, really do need to have that very strong rural component to them, of course, and really teasing apart some of the reasons. You mentioned some of the criminal justice agencies. We've got two titles coming up which have a focus on policing. Uh, police are often far less resourced, stretched a lot thinner. There are different societal attitudes and cultural norms as well in rural spaces where reporting of crimes might be completely different from those people who live in urbanized settings too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And some of our other upcoming works are indicative of the kind of breadth of topics that could be discussed in a rural context. So beyond, our titles like the policing texts that are coming up that are, aimed at how that component operates in a rural context. We've got a book on dark tourism upcoming, which is a really interesting, I think, kind of unique topic, and especially for rural settings. We've got the heritage crime book, right? That's upcoming as well. Farm crime, which is more of your quintessential rural crime, rural focused text. And then some that are a little bit more situated geographically speaking. So one that's focused on rural China and some of the crime issues there. The Continents book, do you want to talk a little bit more about that one? That one's quite interesting as well, upcoming.
Yeah, one of the things that we did, it's not part of the series, but still published with Bristol University Press, was the Encyclopedia of Rural Criminology. And the last section in that had a small contribution from 7 different teams looking at some of the rural crime related literature as it applies to each of the 7 continents. And you think, 7 continents? That must include Antarctica. And yes, it certainly does. And we have a wonderful contribution from Rebecca Kaiser and Rob White in that, looking at some of the crimes that happen in a very isolated space. What has stemmed from that is a new book being published in 2024, edited by Matt Bowden and Gorat Smesko, which really expands upon those issues and what the state of the art is in rural criminology and the scholarship and the literature in each of the 7 continents. And yes, including Antarctica as well. So that's almost like a series within the series, and we're very strongly enthused we'll be very strongly enthused with proposals which will then drill down even further. So some of those geographically located and focused texts. So one coming up on China, but would certainly be open to contributions which look at either a continent in its own right or a specific set of countries, or even indeed a country itself. One of the other things I think when we're thinking around rurality is how it is changing. And we mentioned one of the titles, the very first title in the book is called Transformations of Rural Crime. And it's really thinking about all those changes which have occurred, and particularly in the post-Second World War period. Well, even after the Industrial Revolution, we saw the transference of people from agrarian backgrounds and the burgeoning of these big new cities. Then again, after the Second World War, this sort of mass industrialization again. We've seen another burst of technological change, which has really changed the way rural people live and work and go about their business. So, for instance, uh, the expansion of road and rail networks, the faster speeds that now link urbanized areas and rural areas, that binary or that dichotomy between the rural on the one hand and the rural on the other is now merged. It's much grayer. And we see this interlinking between crimes that happen as well. One stark example in an Australian context is the theft of firearms and from rural properties. Every farm has a firearm as the tool of the trade. But now and because of some of those faster, sort of the lessening of distance, if you like, if you can think of it in those terms, means that urbanized criminal networks will go into rural areas, offend, then come back to the city. So there's that sort of that merging or that graying of the rural urban continuum, as scholars like Vania Sakato from Sweden talk about and unpack in her work.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point for rural criminology kind of going forward. This rapid urbanization that we see, that's going to create unique issues for communities, smaller communities that maybe get left behind in certain aspects. Technological changes that certainly we might on the outset think bridge the gap completely between rural and urban, but we still see connectivity issues, et cetera, in rural areas. And then even, a lot of rural areas, even though we see some movement to larger cities for younger generations, a lot of rural areas, I'm thinking in the context of the United States, especially, we see retirement communities, right? Small rural areas become retirement communities or become tourist attractions that maybe only bring in, huge influx of people during certain periods of the year. And that obviously is going to kind of change the dynamics of the community and the way that police, et cetera, operate in those areas. So a lot of issues between kind of these rural urban situations and our increasingly modernized world.
Oftentimes, the rural has been sort of neglected and forgotten, and a stark or a focal point for policy making, perhaps in some instances, the detriment of those rural communities. And there has been some work done on the siting of prisons. So as the land values in big cities becomes prohibitive for the expansion of prisons, they then get sited elsewhere. But oftentimes, all the other support services then get neglected. So how are visitors going to visit the prisons? What opportunities are there post-release? So a whole range of different things when we're thinking around prisons, incarceration, public policy making, again with policing and the changing dynamics of rural communities. I guess this leads into what do we hope to see from you? And here we give you our pitch for your pitch. So presenting to you an opportunity for you to publish. So whether you are an established scholar and you've been doing a lot of work and you wish to put that into book form, you might be an early career researcher or a mid-career researcher. So wherever you are on your academic career path, we're keen to see a proposal from you. But importantly too, one of the things that we really wish to see emerge from this series as it grows over the years is the so what. So establishing not only problems, but finding solutions as well. And this is where practitioners, people involved in industry, people who are actually involved at the grassroots have a very important voice, which ought to be shared. And whether that you're a practitioner, somebody that I've just described, who wishes to put a proposal together, or importantly, coming together as pracademics and working together hand in glove with scholarship and with some real practical perspectives on what can be done about certain issues and certain problems.
So if you are, if you have an idea that you would like to propose, as you can see, there's a wide variety of opportunities out there for volumes, but you can reach out to either myself, to Alistair. Rebecca Tomlinson is also another good contact. If you want some information on, how to put a proposal together, we're happy to help you with that as well. But we would really welcome any of your ideas and proposals that you might have for us.
We're here to help. We want to see your proposals. We want to see them published. And if you're going to hold that book in your hands once it's been published, I think this is an enormously important opportunity for knowledge to be shared and for the growth of rural criminology to continue its strong upward trajectory with your help and your input as well.